This is the new Early Adopter Streetdog, and I'm going to share with you my thoughts on this highly anticipated model from FTN Motion. And I'm going to save you the time of watching this review and let you know that this is everything and more than you've been hoping for. Alright, so welcome back guys. First things first, so full disclosure, my wife Saskia is a co-founder of the company of FTN Motion. However, my thoughts around this bike is going to be completely honest today, and yeah, it's going to be sort of a bit of a review and a bit of just sharing my initial thoughts on the bike. Now, I'm sure most of you watching this video are going to know all about the Streetdog. However, for those of you who don't, this is the new Early Adopter Streetdog from FTN Motion. The Early Adopter models are the first official production run of the Streetdog and only being made in a small batch of 100, with this bike being number 1 out of 100. It is a fully electric moped class motorbike with a top speed of 50 kilometers an hour. It's designed for weekday commuting to and from work and also weekend missions with your mates. It has a 3 kilowatt hub motor at the rear, and I found that more than adequate power for this type of riding. It also has regenerative braking built in, which I found incredibly helpful in slow maneuvers, while also adding that extra top up of battery along the way. It has 2 power modes, with the default being full power, and the second being an eco mode, which is activated manually by a button on the dash. The eco mode lowers the acceleration curve but still maintains that top speed of 50 kilometers an hour. I found the eco mode to be very nice to use. However, personally, the only time I'd ever really switch into eco mode is if I'm far away from home, my battery is draining and I really actually need to conserve power to get home. Other than that, I don't see any reason why you would use an eco mode. As I'm recording this, there is a nice little kiddo just sitting up on the branches right here. 2 actually. Amazing. So in terms of battery, it has a 2.9 kilowatt lithium ion battery, which is completely removable from the bike and can be charged from any 230 volt household outlet, and is claimed to take up to around 5.5 hours to charge from 0 to 100. However, rarely will you ever be charging it completely from 0. So most of the time you'll be charging it from around 30–40%, so you're probably looking at around a 3-hour charge time to get you back up to full charge. The battery weighs 15 kilos, however it does come with a nice comfortable top handle that does fit 2 hands, so for those struggling, can lift the battery out with 2 hands easy enough. But now this part is the unique part. Since we're not dealing with a big motor and gas tank up front, FTN has actually allocated all of this front body space into storage. So that gives you 30 litres of waterproof lockable storage, which is more than adequate for your daily tasks. This, in my opinion, is an absolute game changer in the market and now eliminates that need for the backpack. So no more riding with backpacks. Okay, and speaking of locks, this bike is fully alarmed with the motion sensor and rear wheel lock. And once finishing your ride, you have the option on the touchscreen to either turn it off with no lock, lock it, or fully alarm it, giving you full flexibility and peace of mind. And on the subject of touchscreens, the Streetdog is now equipped with a round LCD touchscreen to bring it along into its modern era. However, it has regained some of those like retro vibes by keeping an analog display, as well as the battery level indicator is actually in the style of the old fuel gauge. So you get the empty to full and with an analog stick as well. So kind of keeps in with that whole feeling, although it's all digital. Yeah, in my opinion, this just ties nicely into the bike. I also found while riding, I was always able to see all the information on the dash, no matter what angle the sun was coming at. Everything on the dash is displayed nice and cleanly, keeping the whole riding experience uncluttered so you can concentrate on the ride ahead. It displays all necessary information like speed and battery level, all in analog gauges. It also shows you the trip meter, and when in standby mode will show you the full odometer reading. To reset the trip, simply tap on the trip on the screen to completely reset it. So yeah, warning icons such as the stand being left down is actually displayed as a sitting dog on the screen, which is quite cool. And following that, if you're selected eco mode, you'll see that by a white snail appearing on the dash. So that will show you which mode you're in. Now, unlocking the bike can be done in two ways. The first is by pushing the on button. This will bring up a keypad on the LCD display, and from there you can put in your personal 4-digit PIN code, and that will completely unlock the bike. Now, the second way is with FTN's NFC key tag, which will come with your bike. Simply place that over the right hand side logo of the bike and you'll completely unlock the bike. Now, if all of those specs don't knock your socks off, these bikes have been hand built and designed in Wellington, New Zealand, with majority of parts coming from inside the country and only a handful being brought in from overseas. Everything else is custom made and custom built within New Zealand. Having as much of these bikes built within the same country keeps the carbon footprint of this bike as low as possible. Now, the next cool thing that FTN have been testing out is the bodies here are completely made of hemp, removing all fiberglass from the bike. Now, how cool is that? And so now all of those specs are amazing. However, how does this bike actually ride? Well, the first thing I noticed right off the bat was just how well balanced this bike is, which comes down to the team at FTN really nailing the geometry of the bike and keeping the weight as low as possible. I guess it also comes down to the sort of hunched over riding position that this cafe racer style lends itself to. The next thing to note was the smooth power delivery and throttle response, and especially how that combines with how it switches back and forward from power to regenerative braking. And it was a completely smooth transition between the two stages, which made for a really comfortable riding experience. This is a hand-built bike and you really do notice that. And the throttle response was nice and seamless, with only a 3 or 4 millimeter twist to engage the power, with only around a 1 millimeter backwards to seamlessly engage the regenerative braking. Now, this combined with the great balance of the bike actually allows you to be able to roll up to stop signs and stop for a second or two and completely carry on without even putting your feet down. That is just how well this bike is balanced. And I took this out on a range test yesterday, and I was doing this with very heavy crosswind as well. Now, we also tested this bike 2 up. So Saskia jumped on the back and I was happy that I was able to retain my riding position while Saskia still had plenty of space on the back. And I'm happy to report that I felt no loss in power, especially on the flat. One thing I did note is that going up steep hills, I probably lost like 3 or 4 kilometers off the top speed, but as soon as it flattened out a little bit, then we were straight back up to 50 again. And with 2 people on board, the next thing that became very obvious was the fact that we could just have a simple conversation without yelling at each other. So this bike is completely silent and the only thing you hear is the wind rushing past your helmet or the missus on the back. So on that note, when you have no engine up the front to mask all those other little noises, that's when the little vibrations and that become very apparent on your bike. Now, I was very surprised that FTN was actually able to eliminate all of these. Now, I'm not sure how this is going to hold up long term, but I can assure you that at the time of testing this bike and the 300 Ks or so that we've done, I have not heard one single vibration on the bike, except for one clunking sound up the front, which I'm yet to diagnose exactly where it's coming from, but my thoughts are that it might be the internal parts of the headlight, something in there that is just shifting slightly. So now this only happens on really sharp, hard hits. And I first noticed this was after the cyclone came down. There was branches all over this driveway here, and so bouncing over those branches made that front rattle. But it does not make a sound during normal riding, so it's only something that happens on those really hard hits, which you're not doing too often. Everything else is silent. So now brakes. I found these actually to be quite soft at the start, but this was obviously a brand new bike with no Ks on it. So after about 40-50 kilometers, the brakes actually tightened up a lot, and they are now very punchy and allow you to stop super quickly. So now yesterday I took this bike on a range test. So I really wanted to see exactly how far this bike would go for my own benefit, but also so that I could show you guys. Now I put it in the back of the van and we headed into the city, and there I rode it around from 100% charge all the way down until the power was completely cut from the motor. Now for those of you who don't know New Plymouth, it's kind of, I thought, was a really good testing ground for this bike, because it's got a lot of sort of flat coastal area, and then you head up into the suburbs and it becomes quite hilly. So it's got quite a different range of variation in terms of inclines. The majority of the city is all 50 kilometers an hour. So for me, it was the perfect place to test this bike. And so all of you Wellingtonians out there will also be happy to know that it was blowing a gale on test day. So wind was gusting up to 60 kilometers an hour. And I must say, at parts of the ride, actually contemplating stopping it because it was just so windy. But I thought, let's punch ahead and keep going. And that way we're really actually going to get maybe not a real world example, but a worst case scenario of what your range is going to be. And at the end of the day, I mean, what we want to know is worst case, really. Anything you get over that is a bonus, but as long as you can allocate for that worst case scenario, then you're always going to know you're going to get back home safe and sound. And so for some stats for all of you out there, so my height, I'm around 6'1", which is 186 centimeters. I weigh around 85 kilos at the moment, and my riding style is definitely full throttle all the time. So take that into account with this range test as well. And so this bike held up really well in my opinion, totaling 86 kilometers. Now given the immense wind, hilly conditions, 85 kilos of weight, I was incredibly impressed that this bike lasted 86 kilometers. FTN had stated that they had dropped some cells out of the battery, so I was kind of wondering whether this thing was going to be in the 70s. To be honest, I would have been happy if it was in the high 70s, but getting to 86 in those tough conditions made me really impressed. Now that gives me the confidence that on a day where I'm not facing 60 km/h gusts, I think this bike would comfortably get into the mid 90s, and knowing that I was riding full throttle all day, if I really did need to extend my range, I could quite comfortably do that by just easing off on the power. So I was riding for a total of 3 hours and 40 minutes on this bike until it ran out of power. So in my opinion, there's going to be very, very few times we're going to need to be riding this bike for longer than that. Now for all of those people out there with a bit of range anxiety, it was me as well in the past. However, after owning bikes like these, I've had an electric scooter in Amsterdam as well, that only did 60 kilometers of range. And at first I thought, geez, this is, it's not very much, but really if you think about it, at the end of the day, when you're commuting in a city, which this bike is for, you really don't need much more range than this. Now this is 86 on a bad day. So let's say we're going to get 95 Ks out of this bike. That's much more than 60 that I was used to, and I was traveling quite far in Amsterdam, outside of the city. So I can't quite see why you'd really need much more range than that if you're just commuting to and from work. You're possibly only going to be charging this bike every 2 or 3 days as it is. So, and then it allows you just that full battery for that Saturday ride where you just want to get out of town and just clear your head. To me, in my opinion, 86 Ks on a bike like this is more than enough. So now just a few sort of stats of the battery versus the range that it had at the time. When doing this range test, I noted down when the battery was at 50%, we'd actually done a range of 42 kilometers. So with ending up at 86 Ks, it's a very true representation of what you're going to get. So once you hit 50, you know that you really do have 50% more battery left in the tank. And now the next thing is the power delivery and top speed. This all remained exactly the same and only started to notice a difference about 10%. Now the only thing I noticed at around 10% of battery level left was that going up steeper hills, again it felt like I maybe had a passenger on board. So I was dropping a bit down about 2, 3, 4 kilometers an hour off the top speed until the angle went down a bit, and then I was able to go straight back up to 50 again. So minor drop in top speed at around 10%. And it wasn't until I hit 3 or 4% of the battery level left that I started to notice a slight decrease in the acceleration curve. It just started to just feel a bit slower. So it's really nice to know that you can ride this bike right up until 3 or 4% and have no difference with the bike. And since I was riding this bike non-stop all day, thought it was a good chance to just see how the motor and battery was holding up in terms of temperature. So I stopped at around 3/4 of the way through, so about a quarter of the battery remaining. Done 72 kilometers non-stop, up, down hills all over. And I touched the battery, no signs of any increased heat there. And the motor itself, it felt warm to the touch, but it was nowhere near hot. So thinking sort of around 37, 38, possibly 39 degrees, so nothing to be alarmed about there. However, I do know that FTN has now added like a coolant liquid into the back rear hub motors. So especially for people who are going to be buying these in Wellington or really hilly cities, it's good to know that the temperature is going to stay low in your rear hub motor. Okay, so now who is this bike actually for? Now ideally this bike is for someone who wants to use this for your weekday commuting to work, but still wants something fun and practical to use on the weekend, as it's a great little machine to be taking to the beach with your mates or off for a nice little romantic picnic with the missus. However, this bike is definitely not for someone who needs to travel on roads that are higher than 50 kilometers an hour. So you're definitely not going to be wanting to take this on any motorways or highways. Now it's also suitable for anybody who wants to reduce their car usage by jumping on an electric bike but doesn't like the aspect of pedaling. This bike will be great, and given the 30 litres of lockable waterproof storage, it really does make it a practical bike for those situations. So you can still pop down, do all your chores through the city, pick up some groceries on the way back, chuck in a loaf of sourdough, and you're good to go. It really does have all the room for all of that. Now, I think you can tell that I absolutely love this bike, because I really do. In my opinion, I think it's a great little commuter. For us, it's just the perfect little machine to whip down on the beach or whip down to the Foursquare, pick up some food, get out of the car more. And something nice just when you're having a busy day. It's so nice to just jump on something like this and just cruise off and just have time to think, be away from it all, you know. But however, we've only done around 300 kilometers in total on this bike, so this is by no means a long-term review. But as of now, this bike has just been an absolute pleasure to ride, and I think the guys and girls at FTN Motion have just done an incredible job. I've been lucky enough to see the progress of everything going forward, from the production bike, the prototype bike, through to the beta testing units, which I thought were production ready. But then, yeah, seeing the final early adopter bike, which is the proper production model, even this is light years above what the beta bikes were. And they were a huge step up from the prototype itself as well. So yeah, I mean, you're really getting a proper handmade and custom built bike, and it shows everywhere you look around this bike. Everything has just been designed perfectly, and the attention to detail is incredible. So yeah, I'm going to really enjoy using this bike. So thanks so much for watching this review, sort of initial thoughts. And yeah, if you like this, please subscribe to the channel. If you're new here, then we're setting up a channel to document our sort of journey through setting up our off-grid home here in New Zealand. We're based here in Taranaki, New Zealand, but we live half of the year in Amsterdam, Netherlands. So if you're into that sort of stuff, then like, subscribe, and follow along on that journey. Other than that, if you've got one of these bikes on order or you're looking for something like this, I can highly recommend it. Honest opinion, really, it is just an incredible bike. There's very little things that I can point out that I do not like about this bike. So I know there's limited numbers out, so if you're interested in picking one up, I would contact the team at FTN Motion straight away and talk to them about earliest deliveries of this bike. But yeah, other than that, thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next one.